friends. I am on day 6 of COVID-19 or coronavirus and thought, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what the symptoms have been like. Let's talk about the bureaucracy involved with not being able to access testing, and kind of how this journey's been going so far. So first of all, my symptoms have been very mild, for how they're considered. So that's been really good. Second kind of big thing, at every single level I've been denied testing, but I am a presumed positive by the state of Missouri. But I'm not counted in their statistics, so that's cool and is kind of an entire different story. That will probably be a separate video. And I think also kind of a big thing to mention before I talk about everything is that my symptoms, so with them being mild, I have not had as many of the like respiratory symptoms. My symptoms have been more along the fever and exhaustion side of things. So, everybody's symptoms who are getting this kind of follows a different path. It's not like cold or flu where, you start off, maybe with some sneezing and maybe you start getting a sore throat and nasal congestion, and, it follows this path of getting worse and then getting better over, for me, 2+ weeks, and then you're better. And you know how it'll go. It's kind of like, it's predictable. This is not predictable. The uncertainty that comes with it is kind of one of the scary things, because you just don't know like when you're gonna get better, if you're gonna get better. You don't know what your symptoms are gonna be day to day. So these are kind of some things to think about, and things that have kind of made it a little bit difficult. Sorry, I've got like 3 cats in my bed right now. They're all vying for my attention. All right, bye, baby cat. Okay, so today is day 6. Day 1 started with a sore throat for me. I thought it was allergies at first because it's springtime. But on day 2, my sore throat got worse, and I decided to take my temperature, and I had a fever. I already knew what my baseline was on my thermometer, because a week before my symptoms started, I had taken my temperature quite a few times out of kind of paranoia, kind of to check, because I had been out of town and traveling and just wanted to make sure I didn't have a fever or anything, just making sure I was okay. So because of that, I already knew what my baseline was on that particular thermometer. And in hindsight, I think that was a really good thing, because I already know that my body temperature is lower than the average person's. It's in the 97 range, but it let me know precisely what it was, and what it was at different times of the day, because we do know that the human body temperature is different throughout the day. And so knowing what my body temperature was on different days and at different times on my thermometer was good for moving forward, because then when it was 2 degrees higher, I knew that I definitely had a fever. So on day 2, I had sore throat. I had a fever that was 2 degrees higher than my normal. So my normal temperature is 97.7, and I had a fever of 99.6. So that's pretty significant for me. I'm not a person who ever runs fevers. I started feeling really exhausted, so I needed like a 5 or 6 hour nap in the middle of the day. And I hadn't really been taking any naps during the day, so that was unusual. And when I woke up from my nap on day 2, I was just still absolutely exhausted. So I immediately informed my husband. Um, so he's in another state right now because our work has us separated in two different states. So he was really concerned. And he's like, I'll pack a bag. If I need to fly out to you, like immediately, I will. Um, and I was like, I don't know what this is yet, but I will call, student health center the next morning and see, can I get tested? What's going to go on? Day 3, I also started to get a headache along with my sore throat getting worse. Um, my fever kept going in and out, but for the most part was still high. It was still usually in the 99 or upper 98 range, which once again was still at least 1 degree to 2 degrees higher than usual for me. And my exhaustion was still really high. I was having a tiny bit of coughing, but it was only if I talked a whole lot or laughed. So my coughing has been pretty minimal. I started having the most minimal of like compression in my chest, but it really wasn't my main symptom. And for that day, I spent all of it either on the phone with various like nurses and public health officials and all kinds of stuff, or sleeping. That's all I could do. Like I was informing my bosses, like my advisor and my like professor who's in charge of all of us who are adjunct or graduate student teachers, like that I'm sick, it's looking like COVID. Just letting them know, still working with different nurses at student health, working with SSM and their virtual screening, working with COVID hotlines, just like trying to figure out what to do for testing. I like have my days mixed up a little bit, but I don't know if it was day 3 or day 4, but basically it through all of it was denied testing. But by the end of it, I did manage to like get all the way to the top of like director of public health and infectious diseases and the supervisor of the county COVID hotline. Like I was talking to like the top people from my county and like had my case taken up with like a supervisor at the state level as well. Because I had a unique case with being a high risk patient who had also traveled to an interesting hospital area and just had traveled a lot beforehand within the incubation period. And they couldn't give me testing. It was obvious they wanted to, but I didn't qualify at the state level. But they did send me a legal notice that I was under mandatory quarantine for at least 14 days that I had to sign, or else I could be prosecuted. So that was interesting. So I am under a mandatory quarantine and I am presumed COVID positive in lack of a test. So day 4, I had a horrible headache the entire day that I just could not shake off. I woke up with the headache. Like the headache woke me up around 7 in the morning. Even with naps, I couldn't get rid of it. Even with ibuprofen, I couldn't get rid of it. It wasn't a migraine, and I usually get migraines, but it was just a really bad headache that I couldn't get rid of. Also on that day, like the exhaustion was bad, but I started getting really bad tachycardia. So I already have dysautonomia from Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome, and my symptoms from that started getting really bad. And we managed to get a pulse oximeter to check my blood oxygenation. I was still showing 99, 98%, but that night when I would stand up, my blood oxygen would drop down to 93, and my tachycardia was really showing up under the beats per minute. So, I'd be in the 60s or 70s when I would be sitting, and then I'd stand up and it would go up 30 to 40 beats per minute and not really want to come back down. So my tachycardia was a lot worse. That continued through yesterday. I wasn't as exhausted yesterday, and the headache was kind of in and out. It wasn't as bad. My sore throat started to get better yesterday, but the tachycardia was absolutely awful. I basically stayed in bed the whole day, or was seated, because every time I stood up, I was dizzy. I even felt dizzy when I sat. Sometimes even when I was laying down, I was feeling dizzy, because I had so much of that just autonomic dysfunction, which has been reported in other cases, like a lot of cases of like syncope in more moderate cases. Mine is very mild, but it did exacerbate, the dysautonomia I already had. Today is day 6. My sore throat is almost gone. The lymph nodes are, have been sore this whole time, but they're going down a tiny bit. With the sore throat going down, and with all the sore throat kind of leaving out of my ears as well. And so that's good. So my voice is a little bit less gravelly, and my fever has been lower today. I've been more in the 98 range. I, in fact, had my lowest temperature reading yet in 5 days. This evening, I had a temperature of 98.3. So we're like almost to my normal. And I'm really hoping that we are almost to a stage where I'm getting better. So the reason I say almost is because I don't know what point I'm at. There's still some tightness in my chest. I noticed it, throughout last night. I noticed it sometimes throughout the day today. Like I'll take a deep breath and I'll feel a little bit of pain in my right lung. I still don't really have any coughing, but I do notice that tightness in my chest. That's not normal for me. And I am getting easily winded, doing just normal tasks that I was doing yesterday and today. But overall, I'm feeling a bit better today. So we're going to see whether that tightness in the chest continues, and then maybe I go into a coughing phase, or if I'm just getting better. So I just don't know yet. And that's just kind of the thing with this, is we don't know. It's unpredictable, and the uncertainty of it is just part of the game. But I'm going to keep measuring my temperature about every 4 hours, and continue doing that for at least the next week. Even if I, seem to stop having a high temperature, I think it's important to make sure that's maintained. And then even after that, maintaining my quarantine as well. So this is the video on my symptoms that I have had thus far. I think I've been profoundly lucky that, I'm 6 days in, but it stayed mild, and that my biggest thing has just been the exhaustion. It's still, it sucked. It's, gotten in the way of the things that I want to do, and it's been, a little bit scary. And like every time my mother calls me every day, and she's just crying every time because she's so scared for me. And it's really hard to convince her that, I'm okay so far. That it's just, that I had to spend several days just sleeping and doing nothing else. And that, there's still uncertainty ahead, and I don't know how things are going to go. But that's how things have been so far. And I plan to make another video about the bureaucracy involved in not being able to get a test, because that has honestly been the most infuriating thing. Even more so than dealing with being sick itself was all of that. So that's been my experience so far with very mild case of COVID. Anyway, it's like 7 p.m. I'm exhausted. I am going to go to bed, because I didn't take a nap today. I think today was like the first day I did not take a nap. But that means I need to go to bed early, because I'm still resting. So, bye.